This is an interview with Rasjad Hopkins. He is an artist, entrepreneur, and general Renaissance man, and a member of Subud for many years. Rasjad, can you start by just telling us how you found and came into Subud?
Yeah, well, kind of a long story. I'll try to encapsulate it. Years ago, when I was stationed in the Army in Europe, in the 50s in France, I began to have extraordinary experiences, which I was unable to explain. They were was so I couldn't explain it because I couldn't really describe it. Just I felt myself in the middle of a tremendous force field, and again, it would take a long time to describe the circumstances that brought that about. I had doubts about myself and the experience, except for the fact that someone was with me at the time and he experienced the same thing. We were both in the Army at that time. So anyway, after I came back to the States, I couldn't forget about it and began started at university. I wasn't happy. It didn't feel right, and I kept going to search. And I did a lot of searches on religion and mysticism and all the rest of that stuff, and tried fasting, tried everything. Eventually, ended up experimenting with LSD and psychedelics because I was desperate to find the answer. And finally, after 5 years, I was attending some meetings with a group called the Center of Integration in Seattle, something started by a guy named Robert Carr. It was kind of half a scam and half real. He would have speakers from different religions come and give talks, Sufis, Hindus, Buddhists, and so forth. Now, what's kind of interesting, that is actually where we began experiencing LSD. We were bringing it in from Canada. It was nobody else even knew about it yet. This is way before it got famous. It was being experimented with in Canada, and we got small amounts of it from Vancouver, from other groups who were also kind of spiritually searching. Eventually, Subud came along, and apparently the von Bissings were traveling around the world starting groups, and they were in Vancouver, Canada for a visit. And a guy named Joe Kyle and a group of people there were opened, and none of us knew anything about Subud. There was a book by John Bennett that we looked at. There was a recording and different stuff. And I was at that point kind of feeling desperate because I tried everything. Everything just took me to a blank wall. And my experiences were interesting, but it just kind of wasn't happening. So a small group was started in Canada, and eventually we heard about it because of our connections. And Joe Kyle came down, and we had an opening, and a small group of us joined Subud. Our meetings were Robert Carr's place was a big old mansion up on Capitol Hill. Eventually, I rented a room there when I got back on university, and we would do Latihan there. It was just a great facility for Latihan, and we grew little by little. And I don't know how many members we had at the beginning. It was probably around 20. Eventually, Carr shut down his thing. I think he began experiencing the Subud experience too. He shut it down, and I found a place in Broadway neighborhood, a small shop opening, and I rented it, and had a lot of lumber that had been given to me, and I built a wall, and we were able to do simultaneous Latihans in this little space. Eventually, my experiences in university led me to get a couple of degrees in fine art And I met my ex-wife there, and she also, so we both ended up getting master's degrees and eventually decided to head for California. And we did, and moved to San Francisco. We thought we'd have better opportunities there for advancing our art careers. And I think that was true. I did get a couple of commissions there. And so we were able to make our way, but eventually she got pregnant and I had to take a job to make a little money to be supporting all of this new life. And I happened to take a job in an art gallery part-time as a shipper. And little by little, the owner of the place, a guy named Ed Corey, who was a real kind of interesting entrepreneur, sort of took me under his wing, and he realized that I had pretty heavy duty education in fine art and art history. And pretty soon he had me, and when he knew that I'd studied architectural fine art, that he decided to have me remodel this gallery. So I did that project and then another project and a project. And pretty soon I was doing a little selling for him. And before I knew it, I did become a full-time employee and was making pretty good money and very successful. I built a small kiln for my ex-wife. Her name was Astrid at that time. And so she continued with that. And we had a big old Russian house on Potrero Hill with lots of rooms. And I was able to continue my artwork part-time while pursuing a career in art. Eventually, so we began doing Latihan in San Francisco. It was a great group. We would meet at a place called California Hall, which is on Polk Street. And it was a we had great big halls, and it was really just super for doing Latihan. And the group was quite large at that time. Eventually, as younger people got married and we started family lives and so forth, these members migrated to Marin County. And it wasn't long before we ended up with a Subud house in Marin, and which is another really great facility. So California Hall fell by the wayside because we were a small group. And you, of course, remember that because you donated the money for us to buy a Subud house in the Mission District, which was really super. And it worked out well. Eventually, I became the chairman of that group. Didn't particularly want to, but I did. But actually, before that, I had emigrated to Hawaii and started a gallery there, which is beautiful, beautiful gallery, but it ended up, things didn't work out. I lost a couple $1 million and came back with my tail between my legs and started anew. My new gallery on Fisherman's Wharf was very, very successful right away. And so I was able to pay off all that debt. And while I was in Hawaii, though, I forgot to mention, we were doing Latihan. The guy there who, I can't remember his name, he owned some Mexican restaurants. He was kind of providing support and a place to do Latihan. And eventually that fell apart when we moved to another space, and I became chairman of the group. So that went on for a while, and that's where I was to meet my future wife and became acquainted with the Van Royen family. The Van Royen family were very, very active in Subud, and among the early members, I think they'd even been open in Coombe Springs. Peter Van Royen, who was the father of the family, was a very noted biologist. In fact, he's written many, many volumes on biology. He spent years in the tropics studying and creating taxonomies of a lot of tropical plants. He ended up introducing about 200 species of plants to the United States. But he was a guy that he could care less about money. He was a fugitive from World War II and actually had been a hero. He fought secretly against the Nazis. Was captured, tortured, escaped. So he himself had a really amazing history. Eventually, as things moved along, Chris, the younger, Marlena's younger brother, moved to Oregon with the rest of the family to study at the University of Oregon, I think. And it was there. So Peter stayed behind eventually in Hawaii. He was the curator of one of the collections at the museum there. And he lived with me for a while and became a great friend, super guy, kind of shy, could care less about money, which is pretty interesting because he should have been wealthy with all of his great accomplishments, but he could care less. So eventually, after that, my gallery there fell apart and I moved to the mainland. I brought with me several employees that I had been working with who were also Subud members. One of them is a guy named Biff Schweizer, who I think is still practices the Latihan. Leonard Keir, who I think may still practice the Latihan. And my future wife, who became Marlena, she was Marlena Van Rooyen at that time. She came and helped me and we started a new gallery. It was a huge success. And meantime, we were doing Latihan at California Hall. Then we went to the new place in the Mission District. And I became chairman there. I didn't want to do it, but it seemed to keep happening to me. And so that lasted for a while. And then at a certain point, there was a lot of disagreements in the group, and eventually the group split into two. So with Henry Harold, I rented this place in Fort Mason, and we were able to do, half of the group was able to continue to do Latihan there. And we did that for years. And then eventually I moved to Marin County and became an active member of the Marin Subud group. And eventually there, the group shrank and shrank and shrank because living in Marin became very expensive. A lot of the original people there moved away or changed or left Subud. So the group went from being a couple of hundred strong to being, maybe 20 or 30 active members. So no one was willing to be chairman, and we had to have a chairman in order to be registered as an official group. So against my will, I became the chairman. And at a certain point, I also became a regional helper, which is a really great experience. I advise anybody that's willing to take on that task to do it. It's a great chance to do special Latihans and meet with people from all over the region. And so I became a regional helper, and I did that for a couple of years, was the group chairman there, ended up doing that for 9 years. So I didn't want the job, but nobody would take it. So it was kind of funny, but it was a really great pleasure to go to the regional meetings, just as it was for being a regional helper to go to the regional committee meetings and discuss the future of Subud and finances and so forth. And so that was pretty much my career. And I continued to do Latihan there. I do it occasionally in San Francisco, but the San Francisco group was so small, we may not even have a space again. And chairman of the group, and Marin is just a terrific guy, Meldon. And we've done a lot of work at that Subud house off and on. We had to change the drainage because we had flooding from the property, 3 acres of county property. Their water empties through that property. So parts of the old plumbing system broke down, and we had to do a lot of replacements and spend money on that. And we worked that out, and then a lot of major repairs were done on the Subud house, and it's really quite beautiful now. It's a great facility, and we have rentals off and on which pay the rent. So now I'm going a little less because I got very hurt. I had lung cancer a couple of years ago. That was cured with radiation, but then they had heart problems. I put in a pacemaker and a new heart valve and all kinds of stuff. So I'm feeling a bit more limited, and it's a real trek to go to Latihan and Marin, but I go, every couple of weeks over there. And then my dear brother, comes and does Latihan with me every Tuesday night, Damone Hildreth. And he comes over and we have dinner and he does Latihan here with me in my apartment. And I am still very active in painting. I retired from full-time work in the art gallery when the COVID thing hit. So, and next month I'll turn 88, believe it or not. And I'm able to paint every day. I have a gallery up in Tahoe that takes care of my paintings and we sell a thing now and then. So that's pretty much it. Questions?
So I remember that Bapak stayed in your house in, I think it was in San Mateo.
Right.
Can you tell us some things about what happened at that time and your experiences with Bapak?
I can't tell you much because basically once Bapak and his group decided to stay at the house, I pretty much got myself out of the way and let my ex-wife, Aisha, she's Aisha Hopkins, I let her pretty much take care of it because the kids were involved and everything. So I pretty much backed away and let all that happen. I was there when he arrived, but after he left, I went back to our house, and all I can say is that there was feelings there that I cannot describe. Left behind like this real sense of something, and I felt like I really, for a moment, really understood Bapak and Subud and all the rest of it. But it was very settled. It was the kind of thing you couldn't describe. It was an experience, and so I actually have been fortunate to attend a lot of Bapak's talks over the years. I was at the Japan Congress and saw him and heard him there. I also saw him and heard him when he visited in Vienna. And naturally, when he visited the Marin Subud group early in their formation. So, and then at this one point, I went to Chillendalk and had a chance to meet him and learn a few things. And there's been a few times when I had real issues and I was able to write to Bapak. And he got back to me with very simple, direct, and good advice. So too bad we don't have that anymore, but you know,
Yeah.
time passes.
So have you had any kind of spiritual type experiences related to Bapak?
Well, almost from the very beginning of being open, I've had experiences. Some of the more interesting experiences. At one point, about a year before I was open in Subud, I had a famous guru from India come and visit. And he kind of took me under his wing. I think he wanted me to become his disciple or something. And he used to write to me from Switzerland. He was a famous guy. It was a pretty interesting experience. After about a year, he came back and he invited me to go on a trek through the Himalayas on foot. It would have been 700-mile walk. And that I was still so serious about some kind of spiritual growth that I was almost ready to become a sannyasi monk and totally give up life. But when he came back to visit, I had a really interesting experience. I sat down with him. I wanted to tell him about Subud right away because I was having profound experiences. And my inner voice said, Rasjad, you've gone way beyond him already. And it was very strange. And I realized that at some level, apparently that was true. And I also remember Bapak saying once somewhere, and then of course it reminded me that one Latia's hand is worth maybe 100 years of karma, or something like that, you know. So that was one of the profound experiences. The birth of my first child was a profound spiritual experience because I was doing Latihan in Seattle, and we were able, some of us guys would go and do midnight Latihan, which is really nice because the atmosphere was so quiet. And once during that Latihan, it's true experience. I'm going around feeling, oh my God, I have so far to go spiritual.
Yeah.
And I heard a voice. The voice said, I'll help you. I thought, and I felt something in my stomach. And I thought, how weird is that? The next day, I came home from work early for some reason. I didn't know why. My ex was still in university. I came home from work early and I thought, why am I home? And she was there. And she said, I don't know why. I left class early and came home. And something told me to take a shower. And I did. And here you are. And that was the conception of my oldest daughter, Roberta. So a lot of experiences like that. My mother, my sister came into Subud spontaneously after I'd been a member for maybe 5 years or so, and was cured of mental illness and all kinds of personal stuff. So one of the things I found very interesting about Subud fairly early on was it's quite practical. It's about your real life. It's about your everyday life. And that we should, as human beings, live as ordinary human beings. That's God's will for us. That's what I learned. And the spiritual world isn't something way out there, something fantastic. It's something real and right now. And that's what we are. And that's the gift we get in Subud, is to really get a sensibility of that. That makes sense to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've experienced something similar to that too.
Yeah. So that's my Subud experiences. And I have to say, by following my receiving, I've had an amazing, adventurous life. It's huge. Had a
Yeah.
chance to write a couple of books, and uh, in my industry, I've become, I'm told, a bit of a legend. So, in the end, I've had 11 art galleries in 7 different cities.
Wow.
How I did it, where I found the courage, I have no idea. I just did it. So that's what I tell my brothers and sisters in Subud. Whatever you receive, just do it. Don't be afraid. You'll receive the courage that you need.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've experienced the same as an entrepreneur.
I've I've experienced the same thing doing these interviews.
Okay.
I had a I had a dream in which I was preparing to do these interviews, and there were a couple of ladies that were in the dream with me. And when I woke up, I had this strong feeling to pursue it, and so I started the process of starting doing to these interviews, and it's been kind of an amazing trip.
Sure, it's really good that you're doing that, because I think the early days of Subud might be lost otherwise. It was, you can't you can't really describe how it was. We were just received such a huge gift.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing.
It's beyond gratitude, you know.
Yeah,
So I think one of the regrets I have in Subud is that more of the people that I loved in friendships in my life just simply didn't respond to it, or get it, or understand it, or have any interest at all, which is very strange, because in the beginnings, I think, like you and probably all of us, we thought, oh, this is for everybody. Apparently not.
yeah.
I don't see the answer to that.
I guess we have to be ready to accept this gift.
I think a lot of people are worried about the future of Subud and so forth. And my deep feeling about it is leave it alone. Came to us a gift. If it's supposed to go on to other people, it just will. Because I have to say that most of the people that I've introduced Subud to kind of came to me already with the prepper. They were ready for it. So talking to people, trying to tell them about it, no, worth useless.
Yeah,
Have you experienced that the same?
Yeah, yeah. It's someone has to be ready to accept it. You know?
Yeah. And most of the people that I've talked to about their origins in Subud, they were led to it through some kind of series of circumstances. For me, I was led to it 5 years before I finally found it. So,
Yeah, me too. Well, not that long, but I was led to it in kind of an odd kind of a way myself.
yeah.
But so you had some experiences in. I saw pictures of you in some other country, like South America or someplace like that.
Oh, yeah, that's been kind of fun. I've been going to, I met a really nice girl many, many years ago. Well, I'll tell you the whole story because it's a pretty good story.
Okay.
In fact, I've been asked to give a lecture up in Tahoe in September at an art fair. So this is pretty much what I'm going to tell them. About 15 years ago, I had how I came to this point. It's a little hard to explain, but I had a quadruple bypass surgery. I didn't have a heart attack, but I passed out driving and so forth. And went back to work. And at a certain point, I was out. I like to dance. I was out dancing and eating and just I drank a tiny bit in Tiburon, and I met this really beautiful Brazilian girl, who was dancing with her daughter, and we got to be friends. And I got invited by them to what's called a Brazilian barbecue. And so she said, "Well, come and visit me in Brazil." So I thought, I might do that. It wasn't long after that my business partner, Frank Bowles, came up to me. By this time, I'm getting up retirement age, I guess. And he said, "Rasjad," he said, "I'm planning my retirement now." And he said, "I have to tell you, except for you, I wouldn't be where I am today." He'd become a millionaire. And we'd worked together off and on for years. And he gave me $250,000 just outright. And he said, "You should go to Brazil." So I had the means to start going, and I went every year, almost every year, uh, ever since. So for more than 10 years, I've been going to Brazil every year. And it's become an inspiration for a lot of my paintings because it's such an interesting place. When I go, I take thousands of photographs, and my painting style is photorealism. So that's where I get my ideas from. And I've been fortunate to travel a lot into some very interesting areas in Brazil and fell in love with the people. I love them because they're very social, much more than we are, which is a sad thing. We've lost something. I guess you could say it's the Latin culture. If you go to a kid's birthday party in Brazil, for example, there might be 5 kids, 6 kids, 50 adults. It's just an excuse to have a party. And it's just all part of their tradition. I think that's true in many of the Latin countries. Big birthday parties. And you might go into a nice club for some music and a drink and sit down at the bar and have a beer, and before you know it, 6 people have introduced themselves to you and given you their business card. The next day, you're on 2 people's Facebooks, and it's just that kind of a very friendly culture. So that's kept me going back there. I found that our Anglo-Saxon culture is a little bit on the cold side. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much beauty there. And of course, I like the heat. Hanging out there's nothing much better than hanging out on the beach in Rio de Janeiro. Not much better than that. Just doing nothing.
Rasjad, we have maybe 7 more minutes.
Sure.
Do you have anything that you would like to say to your brothers and sisters and other people who might watch this video?
Just keep doing the Ladihan. That's all. That's all you gotta do. Do the Ladihan, trust God. And as Bapak told me, don't think too much. We're a little too cerebral. And it actually can kind of get in the way of receiving. Just listen to that inner voice and accept it. But mostly, one thing that I think is very valuable that I've shared with a lot of people is to say a prayer every day, asking Almighty God for forgiveness for your sins, your mistakes, deliberate or accidental. In fact, that's really the subject of one of Bapak's songs, is to pray for that. And if you do that, every day your life will change. I do have one more experience to share with you because it's had a huge effect on my life. When I came back from losing my business in Hawaii and ended up doing Ladihan in San Francisco and then at Fort Mason and so forth, one night after Ladihan, I'm heading home and I thought to myself, and I just had a feeling like, you know what? I don't really love any of my brothers and sisters. Not really. I don't really love them. So, wow. As a matter of fact, I guess I don't really love anybody. Wow. That's a zinger. And I thought about it a bit, and then I prayed. I prayed very, very hard. And I asked God to show me how to love. About 2 weeks later, I woke up and I didn't know how to describe it. My heart was brimming with love. And after that, everybody I met, I loved them no matter what, automatically. And people started coming to me because of something that happened with their problems, seeking advice because of this. And sometimes at night, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think, why do I feel so happy? So that was a tremendous experience. And, you know, probably sounds like a lot of BS, but it was real.
Amazing.
So pray for forgiveness every day. And pray for that. As Bapak told us, pray for a wide heart. And you'll get it. You'll get all of it and more.
Thank you, Rasjad. Appreciate you doing this.
Thank you for doing it too. Be well, brother.
Okay.